We live? Are we live? Turn the volume down. We're live, right? You can see me. You can hear me. DJ, speak to me. Just let me know in the chat because I'm always a bit unsure at the beginning. So let me know. If you can hear me, you can see me. It's all good. I'll just wait. I hope DJ replies, otherwise I'm going to be sat here. Oh, we're good. That's good, man. Yeah, just I was meant to be doing a live stream tomorrow night rather than tonight. Off work for a week, so don't have to get up early, any day. So, live streams could be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, any night, doesn't really matter. And I just thought, I've not done like a tier ranking video for a while, like done the 80s, done the 90s, done slashers, done this, that, the other. I thought I've not really covered the noughties. And, just thought, I'm not, the noughties is kind of like a decade that I've not really sort of like talked about much. And I think it's like a decade that like people kind of, it's hard. I mean, if you're trying to find the noughties, it's like as a decade in terms of like horror, it doesn't really have a, like the 80s was kind of like the slasher decade. 90s was kind of, it was more like the sort of like serious psychological horror, more, especially in the early 90s before it went back to the slashers. The noughties it's kind of a mixture of like torture porn and remakes were a big thing, and found footage. There was kind of like this a lot of like these different genres converged in the 2000s. And when I just kind of like gathered a lot, I mean, this is like a pretty much mainstream list. I mean, in terms of like the website I use, like I think it's called Tier Maker. You just like upload the movie in the movie art, the cover poster to the site, and you can just click away and where you want to put which film in which tier category. But originally, it was kind of like I went through a lot of films from the 2000s. I ended up with like 85, 90 films. And that's just, I mean, okay, there's still a lot there. There's still like 70 films or something. But in terms of, I mean, I just had to completely bypass a lot of the more obscure stuff. Because I just, the 2000s is probably like a decade when I'm sure there was more horror movies in the 2000s than there was in the 90s, but it compared to the 80s, it was still like, not on the level of the 80s, but there was a lot of stuff out. I mean, I've kind of racking my brain trying to like cram as much of the mainstream stuff in that I could. But I mean, I had to go on Wikipedia and like, just like, find some of the stuff that I probably would completely forget about, and all like the sort of like less more mainstream stuff. I've just had to basically leave out most of it. I've kept a few like deep cuts in. There's a few like UK movies, which because I mean, the sorts of people who might watch this stream probably like pretty much like know pretty much every film on this list, but apart from maybe a few of the UK films which I've like included, because there's a couple of real good like UK movies on this list, which I think are totally fly under the radar for not just for Americans, but for some of the UK fans as well. There's a few films on there which I don't think a lot of the people in the UK are even aware about. But anyway, I won't hang around. Let's just crack on. Hopefully, a few more people will join the chat as time goes on. So here's what I always have an issue, and it is sharing a screen. Luckily, I've got my iPad set up so I can tell that I'm doing a decent job. Share screen. Click again. Chrome tab. And we want that one. And I will find out in a second whether it's worked. Slight delay. And it's worked. Okay. So I have got like an insane amount of films now. I think there's like 80. There must be about 80 films here. 80 films from the noughties, and this is just like mainstream stuff. You know, this is not like, if this was to include the more obscure stuff, this would be like, you know, over 200 films probably, but well, probably close to 300. But this is just, there's no way I can fit that sort of. I mean, I'd be there all night with that. So yeah, I mean, I've literally cherry picked about. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. Yeah, I think it's 84 films. 84 films from the noughties. I did sort of like select them in year by year order, but it seems to have spewed them out in like a random order, which is probably better actually, because it's less predictable. Keeps me on my toes as well, because my main concern is I can remember every film simply by the poster, because any poster with like slightly less, you know, descriptive text, and it's just, you know, a picture, I could struggle. But I think I'm good. I think I'm pretty much on board with what everything is. But anyway, so basically, anybody's not really cleared how these tier rankings work. Most people have probably seen them. You know, this website, tiermaker.com, I think. So basically, S tier is, you know, creme de la creme, you know, best of the best. And then obviously it just goes down. So A, B, C, D. Now, the way I will rank this is anything in S tier is not necessarily, you know, the best of the best. In other words, if I was going to do a ranking of my favorite films of all time, the films that are going to appear on S tier tonight in this ranking would not be S tier in another ranking where I was doing my favorite films of all time, because none of the films in this list are even close to my favorite films of all time, and that's just the way 2000s horror was. You know, none of these films are close to Jaws. You know, none of these films are close to Halloween, or, you know, The Terminator, Terminator 2, Donnie Darko, films like that. These films which I put on my S tier, but it's all relative to what it's going up against. So there will be films in S tier, obviously, because that's just the way it works. But, you know, my very favorite film of this list would not be S tier going up against, you know, my favorite films of all time. Just to get that clear, just get out the way. So now we've got that out the way, let's just start with this anyway. So yeah, totally. It's just really mixed the films up, and I actually think this is a good thing, because it was totally. I did do this in year order, starting off in 2000 and up in 2009, but it has totally mixed everything up. So I don't really know what's going to come up there. So we've got 30 Days a Night, which I'm going to make a guess now. So when I picked the film, I'm trying to predict what year it came out, because I honestly can't remember. So I think this is about 2005. I could be wrong. 30 Days a Night, not the biggest fan. I know this film's got a really, the bots are in. Yeah, DJ, if you want to just, I mean, I know you're a mod, so if you want to just remove that comment, be appreciated. You don't have to, but I know that as a mod you can do that, because I'm pretty sure that the comments underneath is not one of my subscribers. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, 30 Days a Night, it's not one for me. I know this film gets a lot of love, and I really don't understand the love that this film gets. To me, this film is not a particular film. I think the CGI is slightly dodgy, to say the least. Josh Hartnett, I've never been down with Josh Hartnett as a main character, as a leading man. I mean, even in Halloween H2O, I like the film, but I don't particularly like him. Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be. I'm going to go with C tier. Do not like the film. Next up, 1408, with John Cusack and I think it's Samuel L. Jackson, if I remember rightly. Can't remember quite what year this was from. I think it's around about the 2006, 2007. I really remember liking this film. I remember the premise being slightly far-fetched. He's in a room in the middle of like New York, I think it was. And obviously he goes in the room and he can't, I mean, obviously it's haunted and he can't get out. But I just thought the setting for the film, right in the middle of New York, which I think it was New York, and the idea that he can't escape the room, I just thought it was a little bit far-fetched. I did like the film, but this premise that he couldn't escape the room, maybe not. I just couldn't buy that. But yeah, another C tier, but better than 30 Days a Night. I would say. Next up, everybody's favourite, Halloween, 2007. I think everybody knows most people's opinion on this film. Yeah, not for me. It's a shit show. It's definitely D tier. No more needs to be said about this film. The Hitcher 2000, I think this is 2007, 2008. This is the Sean Bean remake. This is the remakes have really sort of kicked in now. I mean, I think the remakes of like 80s movies, 70s movies have really sort of began in like the early 2000s, and by 2008, I think they were kind of running the course. But I mean, I didn't mind this film. Sean Bean is miscast, in my opinion. I like Sean Bean. I think he's a great actor, and fellow Brit and all that. Good to see him in getting some Hollywood roles, but for me, just not the right actor for the role, and I don't think it really worked. This film, there's just something about being. There are certain films you can't really recreate, and I think the original Hitcher is one of them. I mean, I know they've remade and done a good job of a lot of the horror that came out in the 70s and 80s, like Hills of Eyes and Dawn of the Dead. But for me, the Hitcher didn't need a remake, and it didn't work. And for me, it's C tier. But better than 30 Days a Night, but probably not as good as 1408. If I can get that in the right place. There we go. Next up is The Mist. Now, this is probably the first straight up, is it S tier? I mean, The Mist, this obviously the Stephen King adaptation, one of the most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching endings of any movie ever. That the ending alone puts it at least A tier. Acting, the acting's not amazing, as is usual of, I mean, I think Stephen King, you know, a lot of the Stephen King adaptations, the acting sometimes is lacking a little bit. But in terms of just for the gut punch of the ending and just, you know, most of the scenes in the supermarket are just spot on. I don't think it's quite S tier though. I just think there's something about it. I just think the acting slightly lets it down a little bit. And when I go back and watch the final scene with Thomas Jane, and you know, his reaction is just a little bit not quite. It's a little bit cheesy, if I'm allowed to say that. It just seems a little bit like, I wouldn't say over the top, because obviously the situation he's in is like a dire situation, but it just doesn't quite work for me. But The Mist is definitely A tier, absolutely. It's a fantastic film. Next up is the Poughkeepsie. I can't say it. The Poughkeepsie Tapes, 2007, I think. This is, you know, one of those sort of like grimy, gritty found footage films, which, I mean, anybody who's seen this film, you know, if you see this film more than once, it takes a lot of it's a grimy, nasty film, and you know, I don't know anybody who. Nobody really has a bad thing to say about this film. Everybody kind of heard. Anybody who's seen this film always says the same thing. You know, it's a tough watch, but it's a good watch. You know, it's a good watch, but it's not easy, and you know, there's some really fucked up shit in there. You know, but like I say, it kind of flew under the radar when it came out. You know, it's a film that really grew in sort of status in the 2010s. I think, you know, with the internet. I mean, the internet was obviously a big deal in 2007, but I just think with social media like maybe pushed this film forward, because this film kind of like flew under the radar up until maybe, you know, 10 years ago, and it's kind of developed more of a fan base from that. But yeah, I think this is solid B tier, definitely. Trick or Treat, obviously 2007 as well. One of the greatest Halloween films of all time. Obviously, you know, it's the ultimate. Well, it's the ultimate cult Halloween movie, but it's one of those movies that's kind of just gained a lot of respect over the years. I mean, I don't really know um, where it stood, because I wasn't really aware of this film in 2007. I don't really know where. I think this film kind of started to develop like more of a following in the sort of like early to mid 2010s, because, like I say, I'm, you know, big up on like horror movies, but I think I only became aware of this film in the sort of like early to mid 2010s. I don't remember being aware of this film, you know, back in 2008, 2007. Certainly not. I think it just totally went over the radar with me. But um, I love the film. I don't think it's S tier. To be perfectly honest, I think it's a great film. It's you know, just the way they mash up the stories, and it all comes together in like one, you know, like one overall, one to like overriding arc is really well done. But I still think this is A tier, and it's definitely not as good as The Mist. Next up is Vacancy from, I think this is 2007. I think what's happened is, yeah, I think most of the films now are going to be 2007, and then it's going to go back to I don't know how it's going to work, but Vacancy with Luke Wilson, sorry, and Kate Beckinsale, about a couple who end up in the middle of nowhere in the sticks. You know, cars, and I think they've run out of petrol or it's broken down, and they, you know, pull up at this local sort of like, you know, what would you call them in the States? I'm not even entirely sure. You know, these sorts of they're used in every single like American horror film where there's like a trope of like being stuck in the middle of nowhere. Roadkill or Joyride, whatever it uses them. Halloween 3 uses it. Like these sorts of like out of town sort of like motels, I suppose you call them. But anyway, that out of town motel, you know, from the off, there's something very, very, very weird going on with this sort of place. You know, there's just loud banging and creepy hillbilly, you know, landlords, and you know, they're not being paranoid. It really is as messed up as what they probably think it is, and you know, it's got a really, really creepy vibe. You know, the people that you know, just the camera footage is just really, really on point. It's really, really creepy and really, really well done. And I just think this is a really effective film. And it's not it's not A tier, but I would definitely put it above the Puff Keepsy Tapes. I think it's definitely B tier. Next up, Eden Lake. Eden Lake is a British classic. Eden Lake, 2009, I think, or 2008. One of Michael Fassbender's earliest. Well, in terms of like what got him noticed, I think he was a pretty good. I think he was a pretty big name by this point anyway. But this was probably a risky proposition for someone who was gaining a bit of traction, because this is not like a family friendly film. This is a pretty grim movie, and anybody in the UK can, you know, it's probably slightly more difficult for like Americans to relate to this film, but I know Americans, and a lot of Americans do like this film, but it's quite difficult to relate to unless you're aware of just how feral and, you know, rough some of these, you know, English kids are, you know, who live in these sort of communities, because like, you know, they think that they've arrived at this sort of like, you know, tranquil spot, you know, this river or lake obviously, in the middle of nowhere. But you know, a bunch of like feral kids turn up, and you know, speaking from experience, you know, anyone in the UK, Anthony's in the chat. What's up, Anthony? Yeah, I'd highlight you, mate, but I'm multitasking now, so I can't highlight your comments. But see you in the chat, mate. Nice to see you on board. Yeah, Eden Lake is kind of like, you know, Anthony will tell you, you know, we're well aware, you know, where I come from, we call them scallies. You know, down south they call them chavs. You know, England, Britain as a general is just, I suppose America you'd call them white trash, but you know, there's just we're like, oh, you know, this country is full of like, you know, feral kids like that who don't give a shit. And you know, you turn up at a place where you're not invited, you turn up at a place where, you know, you're not expected. You know, these kids, they don't give a fuck. They will tell you so. And you know, this is kind of like the extreme version of that, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. You know, this sort of prospect is not unheard of. You know, people turning up. And Eden Lake is solid A. I'd probably put it behind Trick or Treat, but it's definitely A tier. Next up, Prom Night, 2008. This is just a dog. This is a dog shit film. This film is not good. This was kind of like at the tail end of the remake obsession. You know, if you look back to the early 2000s, I think, which I don't know whether like it's on this list, but I think Carrie 2002 is like one of the early examples where they were cherry picking, you know, some of the really, really solid 70s, 80s movies. By the end of the 2000s, you know, Prom Night, you know, I mean, I like Prom Night, the 1980 version, but it's more of a Jamie Lee Curtis, sort of like me being a Jamie Lee Curtis fanboy. You know, Prom Night 1980 is not a particularly good film, and the remake is even worse. And this is definitely D tier. It's definitely not as bad as Halloween, but I'll just switch that around. But it's not a good film by any stretch of the imagination. Next up is The Strangers. I think this is 2008, 2009. Yeah, Anthony says Prom Night was a terrible remake. It was, yeah, it was so. I mean, there was nothing. There wasn't even any. There was no gore. There was no like suspense. It's just there was nothing to that film whatsoever to recommend it. But The Strangers, which I think is either 2008 or 2009. I think it might be 2009. I think this film is seriously overrated. I did not like this film. I don't like the antagonists. Just these three kids. I think it's three kids. Hiding out in the woods and then hiding out outside the house. I don't buy it. And the fact that like they were just like completely like just owned by these three little brats, just I don't take it seriously. Something that makes always it's something that I always make a point of is imagine this scenario. I've mentioned this before on another stream. Take this scenario with like these three kids who just rock up in masks trying to freak out the family. Can you imagine this scenario? But instead of the nice like little sort of like do-gooder couple who don't know how to deal with shit. Can you imagine it was John Matrix from Commando? Can you imagine? Just imagine it's The Strangers versus John Matrix from Commando. They turn up at the house. How long would that film last? It would be over in like 30 seconds. They would have their throats, ripped out before the opening credits had even begun. It's a ridiculous film, and and the remake is in this list. Not the remake. The original is in this list, and the original is a great film. This though, it's not D tier because it's not horrendous, but it's definitely C tier, and it's definitely putting it behind 30 Days a Night. Next up, The Collector from 2009. Yeah, I really like this. I think The Collector was kind of like it was kind of harking back to the that sort of more gritty early 2000s like hardcore gore. Saw kind of started the ball rolling. Maybe not literally, but I think in terms of mainstream appeal, Saw was the film that kind of like started that whole torture porn. And people can bitch about torture porn as a saying all they want, but it was a thing in the mid 2000s, partly down to Saw, and The Collector was kind of like the tail end of that. But yeah, The Collector is a really, really solid film. Genuinely nasty sort of antagonist. Some really good kills. It's not like the most amazing film of all time, but it's definitely solid B tier. And I'd probably put it ahead of the Puff Keaty tapes, but just slightly behind Vacancy. If I can try and do that without messing up. Next up, Doghouse. Doghouse is a British film from 2009 with Danny Dyer. Sure, Anthony will know Danny Dyer is, and Stephen Graham. Stephen Graham from my hometown of Liverpool. Great actor. Danny Dyer is Danny Dyer. Anybody who's watched anything from the UK, over the last sort of 20 years, Danny Dyer always plays the same character. Danny Dyer is just, Cockney, sort of wide boy, sort of like, always like, he always plays the same character. It's him, it's Stephen Graham, who, if you haven't seen This Is England, you need to watch that film. It's amazing. It's them. It's a stag do, which for Americans is basically a bachelor party. They go to this small town in the middle of nowhere where all the men have been killed and all the women are like zombies and they're just trying to kill. Yeah, this film would not fly in 2022. That's all I'm going to say. But it's a riot. This is like the ultimate sort of. It's a lad's film, if you know what I mean. So it's like it's the ultimate sort of like, put the film on, get your mates round, order the pizza, get the beers in, and just have a good time. It's lowbrow, low IQ, fun. But you know what? Sometimes that's what you need. It's like a McDonald's meal, but it's not amazing. It's a C tier. It's probably, I'd put it ahead of 1408. It's probably high C tier. Next up is Drag Me to Hell from, I think this is 2009. I don't know this film. There's something about this film I do not like, and I don't know why. It's this. I never really warmed to the character. I never really warmed to any of the characters. The whole premise of this being dragged to hell after, was it 30 days? I don't know. I never really stuck with me. I just don't like the film more as much as like a lot of other people do, and I don't even really want to go into discussing it. Really, it's just, for me, it's C tier, and I'm going to put it right back there behind The Strangers. Next up, Friday the 13th, the remake. Obviously, 2009. This is obviously a big deal. This was like, the first Jason film. Well, I mean, obviously, we had Freddy versus Jason in 2003. This was like the first sort of actual Friday the 13th film from. I mean, Jason X is not really a Friday the 13th film. You could argue that Jason Goes to Hell isn't a Friday the 13th film. But I would say it definitely is. But is this the first? I mean, this is the film that uses Friday the 13th as a title since 1989, I think, 20 years before, and it's got really, really solid elements, and it's got something really, really. It's got elements which really, really I don't really like. I'm going to quote. I think Lauren said the first 10 minutes are some of the best 10 minutes of the entire franchise, which I would agree with. And he doubles down on not liking the film after that. I wouldn't be that harsh. I think the film after that has got a lot of solid elements, but for me, it's just not. It's hard. I can't really put my finger on what it is about the film that it just doesn't click with me. I think it's just the fact that when the film came out, I was 33 years of age or 32 years of age, and maybe that ship has sailed, and maybe I'm just stuck with loving the 80s and the 90s. I don't know, but it's definitely. I would definitely say it's B tier, just in terms of filmmaking and just seeing Jason on the big screen again. But I would put it low B tier behind Buff Keepsy Tapes. By the time all these films have done, it could be higher. And he says, "I love Doghouse, guilty pleasure." Yeah, see, Doghouse is the sort of movie I can't imagine an American or anyone who's not British even comprehending. It's so. I mean, it's like the most British film ever. I mean, anything with Danny Dyer, Jesus Christ. Prom Night was I think I've mentioned that. Prom Night yeah, it was. House of the Devil, 2009. Yeah, I love House of the Devil. In some ways, in other ways, not so much. I think House of the Devil is a movie that just nails the 80s aesthetic more than probably any 80s film. Sorry, more than any film I've seen outside the 80s. I think the opening sort of like 10 minutes, she applies for the job as the babysitter, whatever. I think it's a babysitter, and she's walking away. She's got the Walkman on, and she's walking along. The color tone they use, it's just so on point. It just looks like the 80s. More so than any film I've ever seen try to replicate the decade, and not even just the 80s. It's replicating the early 80s, and I think that's important because I think we kind of associate the 80s now with like this with neon colors and these blues and reds and greens. It's I think our vision of the 80s has kind of become kind of slightly skewed by YouTube. I mean, I love listening to like a lot of like the new retro wave. Anybody who checks out new retro wave YouTube channel, it plays a lot of like synth music, it's synth music made today, but it's heavily influenced by the 80s. But the videos are all like very much neon colors and that. And I think that's kind of like, we kind of maybe associate the 80s with all these neon colors and synth, but I think the reality was, especially in the early 80s, it was very much drab and monotone, and House of the Devil really captures that. It's very sort of like the colors are very sort of monotone, very drab, and I think it really does a really good job of catching that early 80s aesthetic. And I think this is definitely a solid 8 here. I don't think it's quite up to the level of Eden Lake, but I would definitely put it, so no S tiers yet. I've done 6, 10, 14, 16 films, but no S tiers. Maybe Hush, right? Hush 2000. So it looks like it has kind of taken a bit of a. It has put them in some sort of order, these films, because it's 2009 again. Hush, a film that no American watching this has ever heard of. Maybe I don't even think Dan Shine has even heard of this film. This film is a really, really, really solid British horror film. If anybody's got any interest, if you like The Vanishing from '89, the German film, or the remake, or Breakdown with Kurt Russell, this from 2009 is like, it's like a UK take on that sort of premise. Guy, his job is he puts up advertising in service stations on motorways across the north of England. Pulls into he's driving along the motorway with his girlfriend, and the shutter of a lorry like suddenly pulls up like in front of him, and there's a woman chained up, but it comes down like immediately, and he's kind of like, he's trying to process it. Have I just seen that? And he decides, there's a woman chained up, but he's trying to make a note of the registration plate, and it's just all like there's mud all over it. He can't make it out. Tries ringing the police, and they just say, we'll deal with it, whatever. And he pulls into a service. He just basically decides, I'm going to forget about it. His girlfriend's not happy. Pulls into a service station to carry on the job he's doing, which is putting up advertising in the service station, and spots the lorry. Lorry's there. The guy obviously is, getting a break. And then obviously his girlfriend goes missing. The lorry pulls away. He finds her chain on the floor, and it's like cat and mouse. And it's a really, really well done film. It's a film that nobody is aware of this film. Nobody in Britain is aware of this film. It's so, if you Hush 2009, not Hush the Netflix 2016 movie. It's 2009 or 2008 maybe, but it's a really, really solid film, and I highly recommend this film. Anthony knows, Anthony, you're right. It's a quality film. But I stand by it that I say that most people in the UK probably aren't aware of this film, because I never hear anybody talking about it. I mean, obviously you're aware of it. You're like, probably like me. You're probably more like, more aware of like the UK horror scene than most people. But it's just like, if you go on IMDb even and you type in Hush, it doesn't even bring it up as an option until you have to. I think I actually had to type in the year for it to bring it up as an option. So it just goes to show you that like this film is totally flies under the radar. But I think that for me, I mean, it's not quite A tier. I think I am, as much as I rave about it because I want more people to watch it. But I'm aware that it is a solid B, like literally a B movie in terms of like I will literally put it B tier. Um, but I would definitely put it ahead of Vacancy. Um, but yeah, and next up, Jennifer's Body from 2009. Megan Fox. Don't like this film. Love Megan Fox. Love Megan Fox's body. Don't like Jennifer's Body. There's something about this film. It's just got this really sort of like, I don't know. It's like it just seems so. It's hard to describe. It's got this really grimy, sort of nasty feel to it, which I don't want in this type of film. It's kind of like I can't really describe it. I like my American high school movies to be all like big houses, rich families, and in this it's kind of like they're very like low income, and I hate to sound a bad way, but when I watch like an American high school slasher film, I like the aesthetic of it's the high school. The characters are all like live in big houses, and it's all white picket fences. This is kind of like I don't mind that grimy look in an American horror film, but not in this sort of setting. And the setting, the premise for the film doesn't really go with the setting, if that makes sense. It just oh yeah, Stakes in the chat. HST, you're welcome. Okay, Steak. I don't even think I've even included that in the actual stream. If it's about Halloween 2, yeah. So I don't like Jennifer's Body at all. For me, it's D tier. It had the Prom Night though. I will say that. Next up is My Bloody Valentine 3D. So yeah, once again, we're at the tail end now of the remake obsession. So what began in the early 2000s is like with some really solid remakes. We got Carrie with Dawn of the Dead. We got Hills of Eyes. By 2009, we were really sort of scraping the barrel, and My Bloody Valentine 3D is a remake that nobody asked for, nobody wanted. It's what's interesting now is it was Jensen Ackles, who is obviously in Supernatural, and the guy who's also in Supernatural with him was in Friday the 13th remake, which came out the same year. So the two main characters from Supernatural both did a remake of a classic horror film in the same year. The My Bloody Valentine remake is fun. Well, it's better than the Fog remake, Steak. I will say that. It's definitely. I would regard this as C tier. I think if you're going to compare it to like some of the remakes that happened in the sort of like mid 2000s, I think C tier is fair for this. I like it a lot more than 30 Days a Night, but I will put it behind the Hitcher remake because I mean the Hitcher remake isn't perfect, but I'd still put. And I think this is the last of the 2009 movies. Is Triangle with Melissa George. This is a really like bit of a headfuck movie. It works really well, and the payoff at the end really makes sense as well. It's not like you're left scratching your head going, what was that all about? It all kind of like ties up at the end, and it's a really, really, really enjoyable movie. I mean, you never like at any point bored. It's within like 85 to 90 minutes, it tells a story, and as I say, a lot. Sometimes these convoluted movies, you're left kind of scratching your head and thinking, did that really make sense? Triangle totally makes sense, and and again, that is a film that I think a lot of people maybe not very much aware of. I think it's classed as a British film, but it doesn't really. I think it's not. I think Liam Hemsworth's in it as well. Liam Hemsworth is just shit in it. That guy can't act well. Yeah, I think this is definitely a solid B tier. Not probably behind my Friday the 13th, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Next up, 28 Weeks Later. Obviously, the sequel to 28 Days Later. This is very much focused. I actually think this is a better film than the original. I think keeping the action based set in London, I think that was an issue with the first film. Moving out of London to the middle of nowhere. I just like this film more. You bring in like the US sorts of troops, and you've got the guy from Trainspotting, whose name escapes me for some reason. Oh, what's his name? Robert Carlyle. Yeah, he brings real good presence to the film. He's so good in this film. Even though he's playing like a deranged zombie, he brings charisma and personality to just an insane zombie. Yeah, and I just think this film, although there's nothing as iconic as the opening scene of 28 Days Later, I just think as an overall film, I think this is a lot more of a solid film. I think this is definitely solid B tier. I'd still put it though behind Vacancy though, but maybe ahead of The Collector. Swap them around, which don't seem to be able to. There we go. Next up, American Psycho. So we're going back to 2000 now. American Psycho, yeah, look, I like American Psycho. Is it a horror film? Probably not. But it's close enough. And Christian Bale in one of his breakout roles. I think this film maybe lives off a few scenes more than I think it's less than what's the saying? More, what's that saying? More the sum of its parts. I think this is less than the. Does that make sense? Less than the sum of its parts, or more than the sum of its parts? I just think there's a couple of scenes in this film which really are iconic. Dropping the chainsaw down. The stairwell, and obviously murdering Jared Leto. But in terms of the film as a whole, I don't really warm to it that much. I just don't. I do think it's slightly overrated. It's not. I can't put it as D tier, but yeah, definitely C tier, and I'd put it way behind. Even Drag Me to Hell, I'd put it right to the back. Cherry Falls from 2000 2000. Is it 2000? Yeah, I like Cherry Falls. Michael Biehn's in it, which is always a good sign. You've got Brittany Murphy, obviously rest in peace. Gone too soon. Obviously turns this premise on its head of the idea if you're a virgin, you're killed. Obviously in this, if you've had sex, you're killed. So everyone's no, sorry. Let me sorry. If you're a virgin, no. So if you in this film, if you've had, hang on, my brain's not working properly. So in this film, you're killed if you're a virgin. That's it. So they're all trying to have sex. Oh my god. Just my brain don't know why. I was thinking, what the hell's going on? Yeah, so in this film, they're all desperately trying to have sex because they kill virgins. That's it. Yeah, this film, I think this film definitely got a cinema release in the UK. I'm thinking right in saying that this film never actually got a cinema release in the US. Because I watched this film on the cinema because this was the time when I was just watching, anything which was slasher related. I was going to the cinema, and I've heard a lot of people, from the other side of the pond saying that this was just, a DVD release. So I feel almost like sort of blessed to have seen this on the big screen. Not that it's an amazing film, and it's definitely B tier, but it's just it's one of them. It's I like this film. It's like it's one of those films that's kind of got like it's like a comfort watch. I can put this film on every night and go to bed and just like put it on and just like it's like that films like that and Scream. It's just the comfort watches for me, if that makes sense. Anthony says American Psycho is brilliant. Bale's quality in this film, he is. Well, and I mean Christian Bale improves any film. You know what I mean? It's like if the film's average, if the film's amazing, the film's dog shit. If Christian Bale's in the film, he's gonna bring up a level above what it would be anyway. So he's always going to improve something. He's always going to improve the film to a point. Cherry Falls, anyway, that is going to be, it's going to be B tier. It's probably going to be, I can't put it ahead of Friday the 13th, but I can put it ahead of Triangle. Next up, Final Destination, the original, 2000. Stone cold classic. You know, everybody knows this film. Everybody's seen this film. Devon Sawa, who looks unrecognisable in Chucky, by the way. I did not recognise Devon Sawa in Chucky. It's like it's like a different human being. I mean, I don't think I look that much different now to what I did in 2000. Devon Sawa looks like a different human being. But anyway, Final Destination, it's not the best of the series. That will come up soon, but it's B tier. I'm going to put it above Hush. No, I'm not going to put it above Hush. I'm going to put it behind Hush. I had the vacancy behind Hush. Final Destination 2 is coming up. That is Dan's in the chat. What's up, Dan? We're just going through. You know, we've got like 60 odd films, 60, 75 films, I think, from the 2000s. Just doing a bit of a tier ranking, as you can see there. You know, nothing yet. It's hit S tier. If you can see what's underneath, you might get an idea of what I would put in S tier. And if I've missed anything out from the 2000s, guys, just let me know in the comments, because literally, I mean, Dan, I mean, this is quite a mainstream tier ranking. And if I was going to include more like hardcore stuff, it would be ridiculous. I'd be here for like 4 hours. So I've tried to focus more on mainstream stuff. There's a few deep cuts, mainly UK stuff, which, you know, a few you guys may not be aware of, but it is pretty much mainstream stuff. But yeah, I can't spend 4 hours doing this, but you know, maybe another time I'll take some of the more the deep cuts from the 2000s. But next up, Hollow Man from this is 2000, Kevin Bacon. Really like Hollow Man. Not seen the sequel, but really like the premise. You know, this is obviously, you know, an idea that goes back to probably the fifth. And I'm not sure of the origins of Hollow Man. I'm assuming it goes back to like the 50s or the 40s, but the idea of making yourself invisible. And Kevin Bacon, I like the film because Kevin Bacon starts out as a half decent guy. You can tell he's got the potential to go bad. And as obviously he makes himself invisible, he becomes more and more corrupted. You know, he goes from doing the stuff that most people would do to going to doing stuff that most people wouldn't do. But yeah, it's a really, really fun watch. Definitely B tier for me. Probably lower B tier behind Triangle. Next up, Ju-On, otherwise known as The Grudge from 2000. This film is genuinely disturbing film. I thought the first time I watched The Grudge or Ju-On, I think this is I don't think this is my first introduction to like Japanese horror. I think I'd seen Ringu before, but this film I think was a lot creepier. And there's a scene where it's like a CCTV footage of like a corridor and I think it's like in a hotel or something. And the door opens and then something just walks along the corridor and then it just zooms in on the camera, if I remember rightly. I mean, those Japanese movies with their CCTV, like anything like that in the eye, oh my God, they know how to they know how to build tension. And yeah, I mean, Ju-On is probably the high point for me. This is coming from an amateur. I mean, I'm no expert on Japanese horror. In terms of, I've seen the mainstream stuff. I've seen The Grudge. I've seen The Ring. You know, The Eye. I've seen all the mainstream stuff. So I wouldn't call myself any sort of authority. From what I've seen, Ju-On is the best I've seen of that bunch of like sort of early 2000s, late 90s, you know, J horror. Definitely A tier. I'd have to put it behind House of the Devil. Though it's definitely low A tier for me. Next up, yeah, this is just a scary movie. I know it's a comedy, but it's got horror elements. There's quite some gore, and obviously this film just completely riffs on Scream, and I know we did last summer, but I just it's a fun movie. It's just don't take it seriously. It takes the piss, and it's just I like this film, and it's I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It's for me, it's C tier, um, and I put it ahead of 30 Days a Night for certain. So I put it right up there. Next up is Scream 3 from 2000. Obviously, this is the film. Anthony says J horror is so creepy and dark. Yeah, you're right. The Japanese, the Koreans, they just a lot of their horror is so based in like ghost stories. It's all tied into their culture. You're not going to get like a J horror slasher film the way we would in the West. Their mindset is totally different to ours, and a lot of their sort of like horror is based around spiritual stuff, and you know definitely around evil spirits and stuff, and that's what they do well. And I think that's why we struggle to like sort of recreate that. I mean, I think The Ring did a good job in 2002, the Naomi Watts movie, but I think in general, I think we just like maybe just stop trying to recreate what they do in the East, in the West. They do what they do well, and let's leave them to it and just stop trying to like bastardize everything. Anyway, yeah, Scream 3, yeah, Scream 3 is a shit show. It's the weakest, well, touch wood, it's still the weakest Scream movie after the new Scream movie. Because, yeah, Scream 3 has got nothing to recommend it. I love the first two Scream films. Scream 4, not so much, but I adore the first two films. 3, no, 3 is just an absolute shit show. Hate the characters, hate the killers. Um, I just the killer in Scream 3 is just so. What is that? What was the point? It's just like, and Scream. You could make the same argument for Scream 4, but at least Scream 4 maybe was just a more fun film, less boring. Um, yeah, so Touchwood Scream 5 isn't a touch above this one, but this is it's not D tier. I can't put any Scream film at D tier, but it's definitely C tier, and I'd probably put it ahead of Drag Me to Hell, but behind The Strangers. Next up is Urban Legend. I think that's Urban Legend Final Cut, which is this is definitely D tier. This film is oh my god, this film is so bad. I mean, has any horror trilogy ever like sunk so low so quickly as the Urban Legends franchise? I mean, you take it. I mean, not everybody's a fan of Jamie Blank's '98 version. I love '98 Urban Legend. You've got Robert Englund, you've got Joshua Jackson, you've got fucking hell, Jared Leto. You've got some like there's some really posh English guy as well who's like a professor. I don't know who he is, but he's just like a posh English guy, so that gives it extra kudos. He's probably really, really well known. You've got Rebecca Gayheart, who is probably the one downside in the fact that, spoiler alert, she's the killer, and she's about 5'4" and weighs about 90 pounds. But I still love the film. I love the setting of the film. It looks $1 million, that film. It looks so good. This movie is an absolute shit show. I mean, the budget must have been slashed by about 85%. It's boring. There's no gore that I remember. It's fun about film students trying to make a film. It's just this is D tier, and this is the worst so far. This is worse than Halloween. But spoiler alert, it's not the worst urban legend film on this list. Next up, Ghost of Mars from 2000. Oh, was it 2001? The John Carpenter at the tail end of his career. This is obviously before the war, but this is John Carpenter, clutching at straws. I mean, this is like Jason Statham's in this film, and for this to be one of Jason Statham's worst films is saying something. Because Jason Statham's done some shit films, but this Ice Cube's in this film. This film's a mess. I don't know what John Carpenter was thinking. I think he was just taking the paycheck. No, John Carpenter. This is D tier. God, really two really bad films on the run, and this is going to be worse than Halloween, but not as bad as Urban Legend. Next up, I hope Lorne's not in the chat. Well, I hope he is in a way, but it's a trilogy of terror. It's Jason X. Jason X from 2001. Jason X. Right, this isn't going to be D tier. Jason X, we all know this is like a divisive movie in sort of, not just in the Friday the 13th franchise. This is a divisive movie in the horror franchise, in the horror genre period. Some people love the film, some people hate the film. Not many people are indifferent to it. I don't love it and I don't hate it. I suppose I am one of those people who is maybe slightly. I'm definitely more of the don't like it than like it. I mean, I know Lorne says this film's better than Aliens. I don't know what Lorne was smoking when he said that, but each to his own. Yeah, this film is not. It's C tier. It's definitely C. It's not D. It's not D tier. It's definitely C tier. The fact that Jason's in it, I just can't rank it too lowly. But it's definitely C tier, and I'm going to put it. Yeah, I'm going to put it ahead of My Bloody Valentine 3D, but behind The Hitcher. I think that's fair. Next up is a stone cold classic with a less than classic director. It's Jeepers Creepers by Victor Salva. Okay, yeah, just Victor Salva. Let's get this out the way. Victor Salva is a piece of shit. I hope Victor Salva, dies a horrible death. He's a piece of shit. But he made a really, really good film in Jeepers Creepers. I went to cinema to see this film and I was blown away. I just adore it. I love the setting. I love that, that open road setting. I love the characters. The brother and sister are so good together. You genuinely believe they are brother and sister. Just, the remote town where everyone's like just hillbillies and just like looking at them like the freaks, and it does play on a lot of tropes about that sort of setting, but it does it so well. And this for me, I'm going to go S tier. I'm going to go S. Like I said, this is all in relation to the films it's up against. Like Jeepers Creepers would not be S tier up against my favorite films of all time. This would be like B. It's up against Jaws and Halloween, Terminator. This would not be S tier. This would be the B tier. But it's not up against those films, so I've got to go with the best of the bunch, and this is one of the best of the bunch. And there's not many films on this list which I would class as S tier, but this is definitely one of them. So, yeah, the best so far. Next is The Others from 2001, Nicole Kidman, a film that like a lot of people just totally seem to have forgotten about. I never hear people talk about this film, and it's really, really effective. Like creepy sort of period piece, and it's been done to death. Yeah, but when you've got like someone of the caliber of Nicole Kidman in this sort of role, it really sort of like adds like a little bit of kudos to the movie. And I actually think this is, it's been a long time since I've seen this film, but I remember having a really good time with this film. And it doesn't really sort of, the others didn't really, I don't remember it really sort of like trigger, start off like any sort of scene, or it never seemed. It didn't come at the end of any sort of like horror scene. It just came and went, and it is what it is, and I just really like it. I think it's definitely a B-tier movie. I've not really got much to say about it, but I would definitely put it maybe behind Cherry Falls, but behind the Triangle. No, switch them around. Next up is Session 9 from 2001 or 2002. Yeah, Session 9 is a stone cold classic. This is kind of like a movie that maybe was a deep cut up until maybe 10 years ago. And I think the word of the internet has elevated this film to a point where it's become a lot more than that. Anthony says, I thought Jeepers Creepers was amazing. It was different to most films at the time. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it definitely was. Jeepers Creepers. Dan says Jeepers Creepers was a breath of fresh air at the time. It was. Yeah, I mean, it was just. I just think it's an amazing film. I mean, you have to separate the man from the art. You know, he did some fucked up shit, Victor Salva, but I can't deny he made an amazing film, and the guy's a piece of shit, but I still fucking love the film. And he's gone on to make some shit, I mean, Jeepers Creepers 2 was a piece of shit. Session 9. So Session 9, yes. So Session 9, bunch of guys go into an old psychiatric hospital to remove asbestos. Peter Mullen, who is just fucking amazing. Peter Mullen, anybody who's, I don't think he's done much in the States, but, the guy's fucking amazing actor. Anybody who's not seen Tyrannosaur, which is a British movie where he plays like an alcoholic dealing with shit, and Olivia Colman, who's now like an Oscar-winning actress, she's in it. So Peter Mullen and Olivia Colman in a film together. It's from 2011, Tyrannosaur. Check it out. It's amazing. Yeah, Peter Mullen's in this movie. He's like the head of this group who go in to remove asbestos. It's a psychiatric hospital, abandoned. Shit goes down. Most people who watch the stream have probably seen the film. It's a really, really, really good film. It's like the complete opposite of a movie like 13 Ghosts or House on Haunted Hill, which is kind of sort of similar in a way, where they go into like a building which is like haunted in a way, if you know what I mean. But this is a lot more, you're just questioning, is this real? Is this not? Are they all going mad? It's a great film, and this is definitely, it's not quite S tier, but it's definitely A tier. I would put it. I'm gonna put it behind Eden Lake, but ahead of House of the Devil. Sorry, if I can do that. Next up, 13. No, this is Session 9 is like the complete opposite of 13 Ghosts. 13 Ghosts is like the sort of cheesy, but sort of on a similar line to Session 9. Go into like a house, whatever. People see shit, whatever. 13 Ghosts is like the sort of cheesy version, which is it's just like in your face. It's just like badly acted. I know people like this film. I don't like this film. I think this film is fucking garbage. It's bad CGI, cheap jump scares. But what I remember anyway. Badly acted. 13 Ghosts. I never really got this. I think this came out a year or two after House on Haunted Hill, and I love that film. I love House on Haunted Hill, and I thought this was going to be in the same sort of bracket as that, and I thought this was going to be like a similar sort of film. Maybe it's similar in some ways, but this film was just way worse. I mean, I love House on Haunted Hill, but 13 Ghosts, no, this is D tier for me. I will put it ahead of No, I'm going to put it ahead of Halloween, but behind Prom Night. Next up is a film I know gained a lot of love in the community, because Valentine. Jamie Blanks, obviously directed Urban Legend. Yeah, I think this film gets a free pass too much. I don't think this film is a particularly good film. I think this film, in terms of like slasher movies of the late 90s, early noughties, this is way down the list. But for some reason, it seems to gain a lot of respect and a lot of love. I don't really know why. Anthony says another fun slasher from Jamie Blanks after Urban Legend. Yeah, I would disagree, Anthony. To me, this is not. I'm not a big fan of this film, to be honest with you. I think this is definitely C tier. I've not really got much to say about it, to be honest with you. I'll put this. This is going behind American Psycho, I think. Next up, 28 Days Later in 2002. Obviously, iconic movie. I'm not a massive fan of. I mean, I like the film. I like the opening half an hour, 40 minutes. But once they leave London and go, up north and move away from the city, it just loses its appeal to me. I don't like the characters. I think Cillian Murphy does a good job, but I don't like some of the side characters. I don't like when they bring the army into it. It's just not for me. I much prefer 28 Weeks Later. I think this is a C tier film with some B tier moments and maybe even an A tier beginning. But I would put this maybe behind Jason X, ahead of My Bloody Valentine. Next up, Blade 2. Blade 2, by far the best Blade film, in my opinion, from 2002. Wesley Snipes legend. You've got I think Triple H is in this. Is Triple H in Blade Trinity, or is he in this one? Oh, he's in Trinity. This is the one with is it Luke Goss from Bros, or Matt Goss, whatever his name is. But yeah, Blade 2, solid movie. I mean, just perfect balance of action and gore and just storytelling. I mean, Blade Trinity was just an absolute shit show. It peaked with this film. I mean, they should have just ended it after 2. This film is although it's still B tier, I would say. But I'm going to put this ahead of Hush. I'm going to take top of B tier. Next up is Eli Roth's Cabin Fever. Let's just jump in. Anthony says 28 Days Later is a British classic for me. Yeah, I mean, but what's your opinions on 28 Weeks Later, Anthony? Because I actually think 28 Weeks Later is a better film. I mean, I know a lot of people go with the first film. Have they not got any plans? You see, I think, we're getting to the point now where 28 Days Later was in 2002. We're in a position now where we could realistically do 28 years later, and it wouldn't be that far off, the actual timeline. Because it seems like, I'm amazed they haven't done it 28 months later. And why not do it 28 years later? I mean, I think that would be, I don't see why that wouldn't be a successful movie, Anyway, go back to, Cabin Fever, Eli Roth. Now, apparently this is 2003. Now, maybe this is some sort of Mandela effect, but I always had it in my head that Hostel was 2003 and this film was 2005. But going back to Wikipedia, this film is 2003 and Hostel 2005. So maybe it must be some sort of Mandela effect, because in my mind, this came out after Hostel, but obviously Wikipedia doesn't lie. So, well, not with horror films anyway. So this film kind of left me a little bit confused, because I was expecting something to happen more than what happened. And I think, people who watch the film know what I'm talking about. I was predicting maybe more to happen. And so for that reason, I was kind of like disappointed. And, maybe if I'd gone in with a different mindset, maybe this would be higher. But, I just remember at the time watching it and not really being that impressed. And I think this is, for me, it's C tier. But it's a well-made film. It's, I put it in between 28 Days Later and My Bloody Valentine. Next up is the Carrie remake from 2002. Now, I had no idea the Carrie remake was this early on. I always assumed the very first, I wouldn't say the very first remake in terms of like what kick-started it, but I was always under the impression that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 kind of kick-started the whole remake scene in the 2000s, but apparently not. Apparently, well, Carrie's 2002. I assumed Carrie was later than this. So Carrie 2002, it was a solid start to the remakes. I think this definitely, it started off well, got better, and then by the tail end of the 2000s, I think the remakes started to they dropped in certain in terms of quality. But this is definitely I would definitely class this as low beta. Yeah, I think there's, in terms of like trying to recreate a movie as iconic as Carrie, because the original's a classic. This did a pretty good job, and I would definitely put this. It's definitely low B tier, probably ahead of the others, maybe behind Cherry Falls. It's actually getting a bit crowded now. I'm not even it's hard to see what everything I've posted, but next up is Dark Water from, I think this is 2002. This is the Japanese version, not the American version. Again, it's this is probably one of the lesser J movies, or is it? If it's Japanese or Korean, I'm not sure, but this is probably not to the level of, certainly not to the level of The Grudge or The Ring, but it's a fairly effective film. I mean, they remade this again, obviously in American. The results for the remake were probably on par with the original. The remake for this wasn't as good as the remake for The Grudge, which wasn't as good as the remake for The Ring, and this original film wasn't as good as The Grudge, which wasn't as good as The Ring. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a bad film. I've not really got much to say about it. It kind of came and went, and it's definitely C tier, probably right bottom C tier. Next up is Dog Soldiers. Dog Soldiers, another British classic. Although I'm not as big a fan of this film as maybe some people. I know Dog Soldiers has got a big American following as well. I know a lot of people in the States really like Dog Soldiers. I think this is Neil Marshall's, I don't know if it's a directorial debut, but I do like the film, but I think some of the characters are just a little bit too much. They're just slightly too much in your face. I don't know. It's not very understated, some of the performances. But it's definitely for me. I mean, I would, yeah, it's C tier for me. I know a lot of people would say, well, it's one of the best British films of the 2000s. I disagree. I would put it probably way down behind Scary Movie, to be honest with you, and ahead of 30 Days a Night. Next up is a film I really like, Ghost Ship from 2002. One of the best openings to any horror film I've ever seen. The opening scene to Ghost Ship is so good. The film after that, it can't top the opening 10 minutes, but it's still a really, really solid film. And there's something about, horror films set on ships. I think Deep Rising from the late 90s, and I think Virus with Jamie Lee Curtis, which is set on a ship, and this as well. There's something about a movie set on a ship, because there's no escape. If you're out in the middle of the sea on a ship and there's something trying to kill you, just where are you going to go? I mean, the whole idea of we've got no phone signal, that's a genuine thing if you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So for that reason, I mean, I really like Ghost Ship. It's not A tier. It's definitely solid B tier. I'd probably put it ahead of Cherry Falls, but behind. No, ahead of Friday the 13th. No, behind Friday the 13th. If I can get this done. There we go. Next up is the infamous, the awful Halloween Resurrection. One of the worst films of the 2000s. Arguably worse than Rob Zombie's Halloween in 2007. Still a film that has a lot of emotional means a lot to me because, like I've mentioned on another stream, my son was born in 2002, 2003. Sorry, oh my God, that sounds really bad. This film's 2002. No, my son was born in 2003, and the day he was born, he just had to stay in overnight, and obviously, I had to go home. I couldn't stay overnight, and I just thought, just rent a film, and I thought, oh, the new Halloween film's out, so I rented the Halloween Resurrection, and just the high point of like seeing your firstborn child born to the low point of seeing just seeing the worst Halloween movie you could possibly conceive. It's just, it's like the ultimate high to the ultimate low. So for that reason, as bad as it is, it has at least some sort of emotional attachment to me, but it's definitely D tier. But I'd still say it's better than Jennifer's Body. I just did not like that film. Next up, 2002, My Little Lie, which is a film that, again, I don't think anybody ever talks about this film. This is a really interesting film. This is kind of like at the beginning of the... it kind of plays into the whole reality TV of the early noughties. Anybody ever seen shows like Big Brother and maybe in America, The Real World? So the idea is people turn up at like, this... I can't remember whether it's like a guest house or whether it's like a hotel. Basically, there's cameras in every room. A bunch of people turn up, and it's basically what it is. Spoiler alert! But a bunch of people basically on the dark web are. I think I don't know, I can't remember if they're gambling on who's going to die first or whether. But either way, they're basically paying money to see people get killed in real life, which it's been done before, but before 2002, maybe not very often. I mean, I think this is quite a new thing in 2002. And the thing about My Little Lie, I mean, I bought the film on DVD. The really clever thing they did was in the extras, you could go into certain scenes, you could change the camera angle. So you could see the scene from a different angle than what was actually filmed in the film, which was a nice touch. And for 2002, that's really forward thinking, which is something that I'm surprised more films haven't like made use of. But yeah, it's definitely B tier. It's not high B tier. It's not like an amazing. It's not perfect in any way, but I'd say it's head of Hollow Man, but behind Triangle. Next up is Resident Evil from 2002. Also, yeah, I love Resident Evil. I mean, I actually probably think that the sequel, which I've not included in this list, but I think the sequel, is it called Apocalypse? I can't remember. But I seem to remember liking the sequel more, but I think this film, holds more of a special place in my heart because I think when this film came out, it was at a time when, remakes of video games weren't that prevalent, and I was a massive fan of the original Resident Evil video game on the PlayStation 1. So to see it brought, okay, there's not much, to connect the film to the video game, but it's still good to see, and I just really like it. Mia Djokovic is just like gorgeous in it. I really like her in it. It's cheesy, it's badly acted, but it's just got some iconic scenes. The scene with the lasers when they're in the corridor and the lasers come through, that's just such a good scene. So it's definitely low. Right at the bottom of B tier for me. Anthony says My Little Lie is an underrated gem. Yeah, it's good to see, people are, some people, good to see you're aware of a film, because I think that is the sort of film where a lot of people just got no idea about it. Next up is The Ring from 2002. This is obviously the American remake with Naomi Watts. Probably one of the best examples. I don't really class this film as one of the remakes that, obviously there's a big massive resurgence in the, well, obviously resurgence in the 2000s of just remaking all these old American films. Obviously this is a remake of a J horror film, which only came out a few years before. So I don't really lump this in with the likes of Chainsaw Massacre and, you know, Dawn of the Dead and all that. This is obviously just a totally separate thing, but this is probably, I think this is a good representation of doing a J horror right. I think they got it. I think they did as good a job as can be expected, really, because I don't really think many people have got any major complaints about this film. Obviously, it's not as good as the original, in my opinion, but that was always going to be a difficult job. But I think they did as good with what they had. They did as good a job as what they could have done. Definitely, I'd say B tier. Ahead of My Alive, probably, but behind Triangle. No, ahead of Triangle, actually. Next up is, I think that's Darkness Falls from 2004 or 2003, which I downloaded the cover art for the films, but Darkness Falls is a film that, again, I think a lot of people have totally forgotten about. It's, you know, it's a film where it's, the minute there's any darkness, you've got to keep the lights on at all time for what I remember. And I remember it being a fairly enjoyable film. I just included this because I think a lot of people have forgotten this film even existed. That's the point where I always forgot it existed. You know, it's like, but what I remember, it was a fairly good time, but probably low B tier again. I'd probably put it behind Resident Evil, but it's probably above C tier. Next up is a film I think a lot of people will be aware of. It's called Dead End. It's like a French-American film. It's like a combination of the two countries from, I think, 2004. Yeah, this is like a sort of ghost. It's kind of like a ghost story, but it's really, really, really well told, and I think a lot of people who see the film really, really like it, but it just seems to fly under the radar. I never really hear many people talking about the film, but anybody who does see the film really, really seems to like the film. I mean, I remember watching it back in the day, but this was like sort of like, you know, obviously this was like 2004. I didn't even have the like broadband, you know, fast internet at the time. I think I had like the really old dial-up internet. Didn't have a smartphone, so I kind of watched the film, sent it back via, you know, postal service, and totally forgot about the film. And it's only like years later when it's like I kind of got made aware of the film again. You know, it's because for that's like 2003 2004 period. You know, a lot of people were still renting films, even if they were doing it online. They were using Amazon, and they were getting discs in the post and sending them back. You know, streaming wasn't an option then. So a lot of these films that were released, you know, anybody watching them were just like sending them back, and people, unless you like message boards, you know, people weren't talking about stuff. Things were forgotten. But yeah, it's good to see the Dead End. You know, I think a lot of people who did see Dead End have, you know, really sort of like remember. You know, it has resonated. You know, because there are probably films from the early 2000s, late 90s, which have probably just disappeared from view. Sadly to say, Anthony says, yeah, Dead End is so good, something totally different at the time. Yeah, it definitely was. I definitely say, I mean, this is probably definitely high B tier for me. I'm actually going to put it top. I'm actually going to put it ahead of Blade 2. Next up is Final Destination 2. Definitely the best Final Destination. I don't think anybody, I'd be surprised if anybody's would disagree. The Final Destination 2 is the best Final Destination film. Certainly the best opening dream sequence. You know, the opening sequence, the opening like 10 minutes of that movie is just so good. You know, nothing compares to it. You know, even the first movie doesn't compare to this. And every kill is so memorable in this movie. You know, you got the kill in the lift, the kid who gets his goes to dentist. It's just everything about this film is memorable. And okay, it's not high art. It is what it is. It's a Final Destination movie, but to take what the first film offered and then to go one better, it's like, what more can you ask for a film of this caliber? As I say, this isn't high art. We come for the kills. We come for a decent storyline, and with Final Destination 2, you just get that in spades. It's just such a good film. And I mean, I'm not going to put it. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to go 8. You know what? I'm going to go 8 here. Sorry. If I can go 8, can I go 8 here? Hang on, let me just put it back a minute. I'm going to have to scroll up the screen a little bit. If I want to go 8 here. Blade 2 suddenly there. Oh, sorry, I've messed. I put it in BT. It doesn't matter. It's in BT. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's in BT, but it is 8 here. Next up, Freddie versus Jason from 2003. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, is it? It is what it is. I think we had a lot of high hopes for this film back in the day, but I think most of us knew what to expect. This was never going to be. It's almost Freddie versus Jason in 2003. It's a bit like, to use a boxing analogy, it's like Floyd Mayweather fighting Manny Pacquiao in 2017. Whenever Floyd Mayweather fought Manny Pacquiao, they were both past the best when they fought. We all wanted Freddie versus Jason in about 1989, 1990, 1991. That was the time we wanted Freddie versus Jason. We weren't asking for Freddie versus Jason in 2003. And what did we get? We got like a little bit of a shit show. It wasn't great, was it? Let's not make let's not like it could have been. How good could this film have been realistic? I don't blame the director. I don't think any director could have in 2003 could have really done anything with the franchise or the crossover franchises. I just think the ship had sailed, so to speak. And this is definitely C tier for me. It's definitely I would put this behind Scream 3 even. Behind Scream 3, ahead of Drag Me to Hell. Yeah. Next up is High Tension. This is a French movie, also known as Switchblade Romance. Great movie. Anthony says, not a fan of crossover films. Certainly not when it's Freddy versus Jason. No, it just doesn't work. Anyway, High Tension, otherwise known as Switchblade Romance in the UK, from 2003, 2004. I'm not sure which one, but this was kind of like the beginning of like that sort of French hardcore violence, ultra gory scene that became a thing in the mid 2000s. Films like Martyrs, Frontiers came out a few years later. I mean, I'm not a fan of like those ultra violent, real hardcore stuff like Martyrs, but Switchblade Romance or High Tension, as it's known, it's got a bit of a what the fuck ending, which doesn't make any sense when you watch the film back. If you can just like take that out of your mind and just watch the film for what it is, and just enjoy some of the gore effects. There's a really, really, really good decapitation scene in this movie. It's so good. Yeah, I mean, there's just a sense of like before like the film gets too ridiculous. There's a real sense of like dread and unease about the film, and you're just constantly on edge. And yeah, it's a really, really fun watch. But yeah, I say just try and not to pay too much attention to the end. The ending is a bit crazy, but if you ignore the last 5% of the film, it's a solid film, and this is definitely a solid BT movie. I'd definitely put this ahead of Vacancy, behind Final Destination, probably. Next up, House of a Thousand Corpses. Obviously, at the beginning of Rob Zombie's, what would you call the trilogy? House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects. What was the last film called? I can't. Name escapes me. I really like this film. I mean, it's early Rob Zombie. You know, as I say, early Rob Zombie. I mean, I'm not sure what he did before this film, but this and Devil's Rejects, I think, are just really, really solid films. And this is a more fun film than Devil's Rejects. Is a lot more. It's more grimy. It's a bit more sinister. What's up, Ben? Ben's in the chat. What's up, Ben? Firefly. I'm assuming he did Firefly before House of a Thousand Corpses. And yeah, Free from Hell is his latest. Yeah. But in terms of I mean, early Rob Zombie in terms of like what I've seen in terms of this film and Devil's Rejects. Yeah, I see Devil's Rejects is more grimy. It's a bit more darker. This is slightly. This is obviously this is not like, you know, I wouldn't say light-hearted. It's got some dark elements, but it's done with its tongue firmly in cheek, and it's just a really, really fun film. And you know, this is definitely high BT for me. Maybe not. It's not up there with like High Tension, but I would probably place this ahead of 28 Weeks Later, behind Vacancy. Next up is Jeepers Creepers 2. Yeah, Firefly Chili. I mean, oh, Zach's in the chat. Zach, I think, are you new to the channel, Zach? Are you a new subscriber? It's nice to see you on board, man. Nice to see you in the chat. Rob Zombie's first Halloween took a while to grow on me. I always loved the second Halloween. I think a lot of people prefer Rob Zombie's second Halloween movie to the first one. Although it does kind of go more towards, I mean, the one thing I didn't like about the second Halloween movie from Rob Zombie is like it just shows even more of Michael, you know, as an adult with his mask just falling apart, which is kind of like I wasn't a fan of, because I like the elements of mystery to Michael. But I mean, at the end of the day, he ruined that in the first film anyway, with just showing him just running around as a kid and trying to give a backstory to a character that doesn't need a backstory. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, Rob Zombie is Rob Zombie, and he's gonna, you know, for everybody who says that Rob Zombie, you know, killed the Halloween franchise, if he'd just done a straight up remake, would he not have just got exactly the same sort of hate for that anyway? So, oh, Zach, oh yes, sorry, Zach, yeah, Zach, yeah, I watched your house show. Yeah, nice, yeah, good to see you on board, man. Yeah, I saw your house show. You can thank Nick from Lost River Driving. It's great the way, you know, the whole community can just like come round together like this, because Nick from Lost River Driving, you commented on his video and you mentioned about making a video. I clicked on your description, seen you at the channel, watched your House Shark review, and then commented on your review, and then you've commented and you've come back to it's great, man. It's good because, you know, obviously, you know, smaller content creators like us guys, you know, we need, you know, it's good to like, we can like hook up on that. Yeah, and yeah, House Shark, man, House Shark. Yeah, what were you thinking? 1 hour 50 minutes of that. You know, I hope you had a strong drink. That's all I can say. Zach also says, for me, I love that element of mystery to Michael in the original series, but I took Rob Zombie's Halloween as a different version of Michael. Yeah, I mean, the absolute, you know, the thing that really makes Michael so good in the original, and it's not really even the original series, it's just that original, it's that very first film, maybe the second film. It's just that element of who is this guy, you know? It's just, he's such a like a, you know, how charismatic in a way. You can't like, put a finger on who he is, what he is, why he does what he does. It's just so. It's never really been. And like I said, I've said in previous videos that the more you try and explain Michael, the more it's like an onion, which just sounds really stupid, but the more the layers you peel away, the, you take away the mystery. And for every film that was made in the original series, with Donald Pleasance, he loses something in every film, and then you bring the Thorn trilogy in, and then that takes. And I like the Thorn trilogy, but it just takes more and more away from that original character. And the original Michael Myers in Halloween 1 is just a stone cold classic. You can't top that. So I love Nick from Nostra there. He's an awesome dude. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's Nick's a good guy. I had the Guinness after that train wreck of a Charles rip off. Yeah, I hate him, man. Going back to the list. Yeah, Jeepers Creepers 2. Yeah, Jeepers Creepers 2 is not a patch on the first film. As I say, Jeepers Creepers. If I where did I put Jeepers Creepers 1? It was long. It was a long time ago, like an hour ago. It's my only S tier film so far. That's how high I rate this film. Jeepers Creepers 2 is it's Victor Salva again, and he's got a lot of like topless young men sunbathing. I don't know why he was doing that. I've got an idea why he was doing that, but yeah, Jeepers Creepers 2 is just it's a poor impersonation of the first movie. And I would put this. I mean, I don't hate the film, but it's definitely C tier. I'd probably put it ahead of My Bloody Valentine 3D, but behind Cabin Fever. Next up is now Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 2003. So this film is. How many films I've got left to do? I've been going for like a long time. So we're into the final stretch now. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. This is the beginning of I think a real sort of like resurgence in the remakes. And obviously Carrie 2002 maybe started it, but for me the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake in 2003 really kickstarted things, and it was the beginning of like real quality. I mean, real quality remakes of like classic films. I mean, I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from '74, but because I saw the original film so late in the day, because it was banned in the UK for a long time, it was only actually made legal, I think, in the late '90s. So I went to see the original film in the cinema in about '98, I think. I loved the film, but because I saw the remake within like 5 years, I actually thought, you know what, I actually like this version more than the original, which I can understand people who grew up with the original would say you're talking shit. But I mean, I've got to go with with my gut instinct, and it's for that reason. Maybe it's for that reason that I saw the remake, so close to the original. It was just a few years in between, and I loved the remake. I think it nails that 70s look as well. It feels like a 70s movie. It's got that grimy, gritty look to it. The cast, I mean, it has the cast are extremely attractive, which maybe takes it away from the 70s, because those remakes in the 2000s, the cast in those movies when they do these remakes are all like, they all look like models. They all look like they've walked off a runway. But which kind of takes away from that gritty. I mean, the gritty aspect of the 70s version maybe is lost a little bit with just the fact that the actors are so attractive. But it's got the gore, it's got the grime, it's well acted. I think Jessica Biel's in the movie. She's obviously got on to do great things. Well, I'll say great things. She's had a decent career. But this for me, this is definitely A tier. I think this is just such a solid movie. Behind House of the Devil, but ahead of the G1, maybe. Next up is Land of the Dead, which is a movie that Does anybody remember this? Nobody ever talks about this film. This is like, you know, Land of the Dead is like George Romero's. It's the sequel to Day of the Dead. I mean, it is. I mean, I think I'm right in saying it is canon in the Dead series, right? It's not like something that George Romero was fully responsible for directing the film. I know Diary of the Dead is a bit of a funny one. Is Diary of the Dead from I think a few years later? Is Diary of the Dead even a Romero film? I'm not sure, but I know pretty sure Land of the Dead is a Romero fully signed off directed film by him. Um, it's not great in my opinion. Um, Andy says, yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 is one of my favourites. Zach says, well, I have to get an early night, so I'm going to hop off. Look forward to it more. Cheers, Zach. Yeah, and same to you, man. I'll be checking out more of your stuff. Ben says, I like Land of the Dead. Big Daddy made a great zombie. Yeah, he did, yeah. The Dead is it fan for you? Oh, so it is by Romero then. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure whether Diary of the Dead was an actual Romero film. But I actually like Diary of the Dead. It's not on this list, but I do remember liking it. Where we're up to now? What's the Wrong Turn from 2003? Wrong Turn, the original. Love the film. It's short and sweet. 80 minutes. Elijah Dushku. What a babe. Like love her in it. Love the main guy in it as well. Really like him as well. I've not included the sequels in this list. I mean, there's just how many is there? Like 6 or 7. Ridiculous amounts of sequels. I mean, apparently 2 is good. I've not watched 2. I've not watched anything after the first film. But I'm a sucker for these sort of backwoods slasher films. I'll just, I mean, I actually think this. I would actually place this above just before dawn from the early 80s. I think that to me is a slightly overrated backwards film, but this would definitely be B tier for me. I just really like this film. I'd put it ahead of Triangle, ahead of The Ring, ahead of the others, ahead of Carrie, ahead of Cherry Falls, maybe just behind Ghost Ship. No, switch them round. That's not right. It doesn't want to switch around. It wants to be ahead of Ghost Ship. There we go. Next up is right. Okay, this is a film that maybe any Americans in the chat or watching in the future may not be aware of. I highly recommend this film because I feel I've got to like really put a shout out for like UK horror because I think a lot of it goes under the radar across the pond. But Creep from 2004, starring Franco Potente. This is a movie set on the London Underground. I think the premise is basically woman goes to a New Year's Eve party hoping to meet George Clooney, doesn't meet him, tries to get the last train home or the last subway home, and she inadvertently gets locked inside the London Underground on New Year's Eve. So it's going to be closed for like the next six hours or so. And the London Underground is a creepy place anyway. So a locked up London Underground, woman by herself, go figure. Shit in shoes, and it's a really, really, really effective, horror film. It's just, yeah, it's the sort of film that we Brits do really well. It's like close. It's self-contained horror. It's not big set. It's fairly low budget as you can imagine, but with a solid supporting cast. Anybody seen Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels? One of the sort of gangsters in that, he's in it. It's just a really, really fun movie. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak highly enough about this film. It's definitely a solid B tier. Where would I put it though? I'll probably place it. I'd see ahead of House of Thousand Corpses, behind Vacancy, maybe. I think that's fair to say. Switch them around. Why does it do that? That's it. Next up is the Dawn of the Dead remake from 2004. This is just like one of the best remakes there's, of the 2000s. Is it this, or is it Day of the Dead, or Dawn of the Dead? Not Dawn of the Dead. Is it this or Hills of Eyes, which is coming up soon? This is just a fantastic movie. I really like the girl from Scary Movie. What's her name? She was married to Chris Pratt. Her name escapes me. I think she's really good in it. It's just such a really, it's slightly different. It's slightly more fast paced than the original film, and obviously these zombies are more are more fast paced. They're running around and stuff. It gives like an added edge to it. There's a sense of urgency to the film. It's just a really, really fun film, and this on top of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was like 2003 Chainsaw Massacre. This was 2004. And then I think the year later was Hills of Eyes. They were just knocking these remakes out the park at a level, at quite a fast pace, but at a really, really high level. They were really respecting the source material and doing their own thing with it. And it was good to see. It's like these were movies that were being remade from films that came out 20, 25 years previously, and they were taking the basic elements of the movie, but putting their own spin on it. But it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel cheesy. Everything felt right about them. And this is just a fantastic, fantastic remake. And I would actually go, this is definitely A tier for me. I would actually say this is slightly ahead of. I'm going to have to put it back a minute because I put it in B tier for a minute because what's happened is I'm going to have to move it up now. Yeah, I'm going to move it up to A tier. Yeah, so I'm going to put it behind House of the Devil, but ahead of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's it. There we go. Anthony says, Creep is brilliant. It needs to be seen by more people. Yeah, it does. Ben says, I like Creep. Patente is great. She is. Ben says, Zack Snyder directed and James Gunn wrote Dawn. That first segment was awesome. Yeah, the scene where she's trying to escape from the housing, the house where she's from, and she's driving on the road, and then I think she just smashes through a zombie, and it just splatters all over the. It's like an overhead shot. So good. Anthony says it had a zombie in it who was trying to think, similar to Boris Johnson. Good point. Ben says Wrong Turn 2 is my favourite of the franchise. I need to see Wrong Turn 2, really. I mean, everyone says it's a great film, but I've just never got around to watching it. I think I was just put off by the fact that it went straight to video, and the fact that Wrong Turn 1 wasn't like this massive big budget film anyway. I just assumed it was going to be like some cheap shit. But a lot of people do rate Wrong Turn 2. So I'm going to have to rectify that, I think. Next up is... Oh, this is one of those ones where I've uploaded the screenshot and I can't even work out what film it is. I don't even know what film that is. So I'm going to leave that one. Next one is Resident Evil Apocalypse, which is the second Resident Evil film. If anyone can work out what that... if I hover on there, I can't work out what that film is. Is that Hills of Eyes? It could be Hills of Eyes. Oh no, it's not. It's not Hills of Eyes. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Resident Evil Apocalypse is next up. I actually like this film more than the original. I really, really like Resident Evil Apocalypse. I think anything after this went seriously downhill. It just didn't work. But in terms of this film, well acted. I think it was like the main. It was like the Nemesis. I'm not really down with apart after the first game. I'm not really down with the game, but the big bad of the film was kind of like based off one of the games, and he looked the shit. It was quite effective. But it's definitely only B tier though. I've got to be saying, like, I can't be rating it too highly. It's going to be sort of down, sort of round by the ring. Next up, Saw. Obviously, Saw 2004. You know, everybody knows the story of Saw. Not the birth of torture porn, maybe, but you know, this is kind of the movie that. I mean, did it kickstart torture porn? You know what? Because I always thought Hostel was 2003, but apparently Hostel was 2005. So Saw became before Hostel. So did Saw really sort of kickstart the whole torture porn thing in the mid noughties? Maybe it did. But you know, Saw is a great film. You know, I'm not a fan of the sequels. I mean, two's not bad. Three, no, I've not seen anything after three. I've not even seen Spiral, which I might watch Spiral. But Saw, yes, the original Saw film, the last 10 minutes is just like jaw on the floor. Like, I did not see that coming. Maybe people watching it now, maybe more smart people now watching it would see it coming, but me at the time, no. Yeah, Saw for me is definitely I've got to put it 8 here, just for the last sort of so I'll put up to B tier, and then I'll move it up to 8 here. Probably put it again. I can't put it ahead of House of the Devil. Head of Dawn of the Dead, no. Head of Ju-on, maybe. Yes. Yeah, Head of Ju-on. Getting down to the last few now. Shallow Ground from 2004, a film that nobody talked about. Nobody talked about this film. This is a really, really solid film from 2000. I think 2005 maybe. I don't remember much about the film. I just like I was trying to like I was going through like old films to talk. I mean, a lot of the films I do remember like everything about them because I've seen them more than once. Shallow Ground is a film I have only seen once, but I remember really enjoying it. Now it sounds a bit silly to say, "Oh, I really recommend the film," even though I've only seen it once. Like, why? If I like the film that much, why have I never seen it again? I suppose it's just because it's a film that like I wouldn't even know. I don't own it. I don't know anywhere that's streaming it. It's a film that kind of just disappeared off the radar. Um, Maybe it's on Amazon Prime to pay. I don't know, but I just remember it being a really, really solid film, and yeah, it's different to like what was around at the time. It's different to what's been around, in the last 5 to 10 years. It is its own thing. Definitely, from what I remember, definitely B tier. As I say, I do need to watch it. I wanted to include it because I want to if anybody watching who hasn't seen the film, just to check it out because it's definitely worth a watch. Definitely B tier though. Probably towards the end of the B tier, just based on the fact that I'd need to see the film again to really give it a solid, appraisal. But what's up next? We've got Shaun of the Dead. Now, I'm not a big fan of Shaun of the Dead. I know it's sacrilege. I just think Hot Fuzz and The World's End are far better films. I'm not. In terms of the Cornetto trilogy, this film to me is the weakest of the lot. Bill Nighy's character in this film is just insufferable. I like Nick Frost. I like Simon Pegg. I mean, but for me as well, once they get to the Winchester, the film just kind of like dies for me. I like the build up, but once they get to the Winchester as well, it's not for me. And it's probably one of the most controversial rankings of the list, but for me, it's just a good. It's high C. It's definitely obviously ahead of Doghouse, but it's just high C tier for me. Next up is Shiveland the Village. I really like The Village. I know he was on his downward spiral by this point. By a lot of people's, most people consider like Shyamalan's strongest work would be the first 3 films. Obviously, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs. I mean, I love the three. I love his first three films. I do like this film. After anything after this is kind of he's going down that slippery slope. But I still think The Village is a solid film. It's not perfect. The twist by this point is getting a little bit beyond the realms of possibility. But I still really enjoy the film, and I still think it's a solid beat. I think it's a solid B tier. It's like mid B tier. I think compared to the others, anyway, that's for sure. Next up is Amityville Horror. You know, so not all remakes in the 2000s were amazing. The Amityville Horror with Ryan Reynolds and Melissa George is not. I mean, yeah, this is not a great remake in it by any stretch of the imagination. I think, you know, you take a film. I mean, the original's a classic. Second film, the prequel, is a solid film. Anything after that is kind of getting a little bit. I think it's a film. It didn't really need a sequel, a remake in any way. It is what it is. I just don't think of the remakes that were around in the mid 2000s. This is one of the weakest, and it's also one of the least needed. This is definitely C tier. Ryan Reynolds just. I'm so used to Ryan Reynolds now being this like comedy character, you know, just it's just like charismatic guy, and in this he's obviously the way the film is, he's obviously a lot more like, you know, he's the total opposite, and it's hard to get to, when you rewatch the film. It's hard to see him like that, and I think that maybe takes something off the film as well. Yeah, this is really low, like C tier. Obviously next the Descent. Yeah, The Descent is obviously, you know, a stone cold classic from the mid 2000s. Always regarded as, I mean, this is a British film, but I never see it as a British film. I always see it as like, because there's a lot of like Americans in it, and like, I mean, there are some British actors, but there's American actors, and I think it's set in America. I mean, it may be British funded, but it may be filmed in Britain, but I'm sure it's like set in America. I'm sure it's like wherever they are doing the pothole, and it's meant to be in the States. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's genuinely sort of like disturbing scenes, you know, in terms of if you're claustrophobic, this is not the sort of film to watch in the dark. But definitely B tier. But I'm the biggest fan compared to other people, so I'll definitely put it like quite low in B tier, maybe sort of towards the end of B tier. Next up, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is a film that. Is this the film that began all the Exorcism movies that you get now? Well, not now, but you know, I remember like late 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s. There seems to be like this never ending like B movie exorcism of this, that, and the other. There was just like, so many different types, and I think it all. I don't know if it all stems from this film, but this is like obviously, you know, the one to aim for. This is the high bar, because this was. But what I remember, this was like a really solid film. I think it was Laura. Was it Laura Linney? Not Laura Linney. Maybe. Name escapes me. Anyway, it was, yeah, definitely B tier. But I say the whole Exorcism movies, I'm not the biggest fan of these sort of films, so it'd be a lot for me to place a film of that sort of nature too highly. Next up is, oh my god, yeah, we're really onto bad remakes now. The Fog remake with the guy from Smallville. This is D tier. Awful CGI, badly acted, just way down. Yeah, Heather Goes to Mars, but terrible film. Hostel from 2005. I really like Hostel. The opening like half an hour, and then it kind of like loses me a little bit. I like the sort of the build up, the tension of like, but once it's actually, you know, caught and in the situation, I kind of like lose interest. And I mean, I think Hostel 2 is actually a better film. I think it's got more to say. It's like a slightly better ending. And the fact in the Hostel, like knowing that, you know, the survivor from Hostel 1 at the end is just wiped out in the set in, you know, the beginning of part 2. That just takes away from the first film anyway. So yeah, and this is just C tier for me. Just random C tier. Next up is, I mean, another remake. Although this is not a remake of a film from the 70s, this is a remake for the film from the 50s. This is House of Wax with Paris Hilton and some guy. I think he was in like some sort of his name escapes me. He was in some like American TV show in the mid noughties, I think. But I actually don't mind House of Wax. I think it's a bit ridiculous. It's a bit silly, but the whole idea of a House of Wax anyway is a bit silly and a bit ridiculous. So it's kind of like, it is what it is. So I haven't really got an issue with it. I mean, and I do like these remakes of these old 50s, movies, things like The Blob or, The Thing from Another World. I've got a bit of a soft spot for like stuff in the 50s. So if you want to remake that stuff, then, I'm a sucker for that. So, it's definitely not an amazing film by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd definitely put it in the B tier. Maybe not too highly, but maybe it has behind Resident Evil, but it has a shallow ground. Yeah. Next up is Land of the Dead from Romero. I think I mentioned this before. This is like, it's not amazing, but it's kind of like, it's better than it has any right to be. For a fourth film in a franchise that has been going for like 30 years, this is probably better than it has any right to be. In terms of like, it's fairly well written, it's fairly well acted. There's a certain amount of payoff to the film. It follows the first. Is it 3 films? Yeah, the first 3 films: at Night, Dawn, Day, and now Land. So it follows a trajectory, and for that reason alone, I can't complain. It's definitely, but I can't put it above C tier, really. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, can I put it ahead of Shaun of the Dead? Not really. I'm not a big fan of Shaun of the Dead, but I can't put it ahead of that. I'd have to put it somewhere halfway along. Then we've got a film, another film. Anthony says, I love Hostel. Everyone's talking about it when it came out. Yeah, it did gain a lot of like sort of interest at the time. It did sort of, I mean, I just remember like, oh my God, what's his name? The director, whose name escapes me now. What's his name? Did Cabin Fever? What's his name? I've had another. Mine's gone blank again. Anyway, yeah, the director of Cabin Fever and the director of Hostel. I just remember like when that movie dropped, it was just like this is like the new thing, It was just kind of like everybody's getting like into this like this torture porn thing, and but anyway, go back to the list. A film that Eli Roth. Yeah, cheers, Anthony. Yeah, my mind. Rika from 2000. I think this is 2006. Rika. This is a film that it did get a sequel in the late 2000s, but this is a really, really sort of fun sort of like it's one of those movies that's kind of like set in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of like that. Is it the Midwest maybe or the Deep South? It's very desert. Small town, middle of nowhere. With a really sort of interesting killer who is killed and then comes back to life, and the whole idea is this: whenever he's around, there's like a really bad smell, which hence the name Rika. Which forget that. It sounds cheesy, but it's really, really effective. Solid film. I'm gonna start wrapping things up soon because I've been going for so long, so I'm just gonna start really whizzing through these now. But that's definitely lower B tier. Urban Legends: Bloody Mary, one of the worst films I've ever seen. This is easy. Like Final Cut was bad enough. That is like the lowest film in this list. Not anymore. It's not. Urban Legends Bloody Mary is the worst. Wolf Creek, amazing film. You know, love Aussie backwards. You know, this Aussie backwards horror. It's, what do you call it? Aussie backwards horror. I suppose it's outback horror, maybe, would you call it? Yeah, Wolf Creek is a classic. This is A tier, definitely. Move it up this way, and I'm going to put it. It's not quite S tier, Wolf Creek, but it's right up there. I'd put it ahead of Session 9, slightly behind even Lake. I've got Behind the Mask with Leslie Vernon. Yeah, I'm just going to just whiz through these now because it's getting really late. So another, yeah, B tier, high B. No, hang on. You know what? A tier. A tier. Another A tier. Yeah, because this is, and yeah, it's Head of Sword, I would say, but behind Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I want to talk more about these films, but I'm just like looking at the time. It's like 2:30 in the morning now. So All the Boys Love Mandy Lane with Amber Heard. Amber Heard is just amazing. She's just stunning in this film. I mean, I know Amber Heard's like a bit of a fucked up individual, but you know, in this film, she's just stunning. It's B movie. It's B tier. It's like middle B tier. What have we got left now? Black Christmas from 2006. Sorry. Yeah, this one's gone up in my estimation. It's definitely gone up. It's B tier. It's with the introduction of like the 2019 shit show. This is definitely sort of gone up in my estimation. It's like mid B tier. Hills of Eyes, one of the best remakes of the 2000s, one of the best remakes of all time. Yeah, this is A tier. This is a fantastic movie. Where would I put this? Probably ahead of Wolf Creek, I would say, behind Eden Lake. Fantastic movie. Still only one ST movie, Jeepers Creepers. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning from 2008, I think, 2009. Possibly B tier. Random B tier. Enjoyed it, didn't love it. Wilderness from 2006, UK movie. Again, always going to represent the UK movies. Wilderness, really, I mean, I actually, when I was part of Piz's movie recommendation Patreon level, I recommended this film for him and he reviewed it and he really liked it. Yeah, if you like, you sort of, it's kind of like it's almost like, it would be our version of like a backwards horror, and like a bunch of like, you know, sort of like young offenders go to this like island off the coast of Scotland where there's this nobody's there, and there's just like this, you know, obviously psychopath on the loose, killing them off one by one. Great fun, great fun. It's definitely B tier. So to whack it in there. I'm not being too precise now. When a Stranger Calls from 2009, I think. Yeah, another really, really solid remake from obviously a remake of the 70s. This is a totally different version. This is nothing like the original, but you know, really, really sort of good-looking woman stalked through a phone in an apartment. Just a fully enjoyable film. B tier again. Them, okay. Them at the end of the stream, when I'm trying to rush off, and I'm going to have to stop now and like talk about Them from 2006 or 2007. I think it's French made, set in maybe like, I don't know if it's set in Romania. It's French made, but it's not set in France. Couple move to this isolated sort of farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and shit goes down, and they're getting stalked by them, whoever they are. And the ending is just so. I've talked about this in a Patreon stream with Piz as well. The ending is just so generic. It's just not generic. What's the word? It's so mundane, which that does not take anything away from the film. It just makes the film all the more disturbing. When you watch the end of the film and you see who they are, or who he is, or who she is, I don't want to spoil it, and all that's gone on in the film, you think, wow, that's really, really sort of brave move by the director, because it's just totally out of left field and you're not expecting it. But yeah, it's just yeah. So the ending is just so good. This is going to be my. I'm just going to say now. This is S tier, and this is the best of the best. For me, the best horror movie of the 2000s is Them from 2006. And I've got one movie left, See No Evil. It's a piece of shit. It's D tier, no, it's C tier, no, there. And we're done. So I can leave the screen now. Go back to StreamYard. Back. Come out of here. Sorry, I just left. I just left my own stream. But anyway, it's like it's all done and dusted now. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that was my ranking of the 2000s mainstream horror to a point. Anthony says, "Great stream. Got most of these on DVD. One of my favourites. One of my favourite horror films. Yeah. Cheers, Anthony. Yeah. Cheers for being on board, man. And for Ben." And I'm just going to go through everyone who's jumping on board. Anthony, obviously, thanks on Ben. Zach, obviously, new subscriber. Nice to see Zach on board. Everyone, go and check out. If you're not subscribed to Zach, go and check out Zach's channels. I think it's just Zach Hall. I subscribed to him earlier on. Yeah, Anthony, some bot. Dan jumped on board earlier. DJ was on earlier on. Yeah, anyway, guys, I'm going to have to go. It's 20 to 3 in the morning here. I've been going for 2 hours, 20 minutes. But yeah, for everyone who jumped on board, for everyone in the future watchers, hope you enjoy it. And I will see you later. Goodbye.